This is Plant-Based Briefing. Is there really pus in milk? By Dr. Michael Greger at nutritionfacts.org. And I'm Marian Erickson. This is the Plant-Based Podcast, where I curate a variety of articles on plant-based and vegan living, get permission, and narrate them to you here in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And I'm pleased to have permission from Nutrition Facts to share their content. So now let's get to today's Plant-Based Briefing. Is there really pus in milk? By Dr. Michael Greger at nutritionfacts.org. What does the milkpustest tell us about the U.S. milk supply? Dairy cows might normally live for about 20 years, but they're typically slaughtered for hamburger after they're just a few years old, when they produce less milk and their profitability drops. But another leading cause of cow culling is mastitis, udder inflammation and infections, which affects 99.7% of all dairy operations in the United States. Because of the mastitis epidemic in the U.S. dairy herd, the dairy industry continues to demand that American milk retain among the highest allowable somatic cell concentration, nearly twice as much as the rest of the world, 750,000 cells per milliliter. The concentration in milk from healthy udders should be less than 100,000. These somatic cells are mostly white blood cells, so when you get up to around 200,000, which is like a million per teaspoon, the udder is likely to be infected. So the somatic cell counts in the bulk milk tanks reflect the level of infection. Basically, if the bulk milk tank, which can hold thousands of gallons, averages 200,000, then 15% of the contributing cows are likely infected. At a concentration of 400,000, which is more in line with international standards, a third of the cows are likely infected. And staying within the 750,000 U.S. limit for grade A milk could reflect that about 2/3 of the cows are infected. Now, somatic cells are not synonymous with pus cells, as sometimes has been misleadingly suggested. Just as normal human blood and breast milk contain low levels of white blood cells, so does milk from healthy cows. That's something we've known about for more than a century. The problem is that many of our cows are not healthy. According to the latest national government survey, about 1 in 4 dairy cows in the United States suffers from clinical mastitis, the second leading cause of death on dairy farms. This is why the average somatic cell concentration of U.S. milk is that of a likely infected udder at 204,000 cells per milliliter. How much actual pus does that translate to? Although the industry doesn't like to talk about pus cells, the fact that pus is present in milk from inflamed mammary glands is a given. But what constitutes pus in milk? The quote-unquote milkpustest was introduced more than a century ago. It pooled milk from infected cows that was estimated to contain up to 2.5% pus by volume, and we'd really like to see no more than 0.1%. So what does 204,000 cells per milliliter, the national U.S. average, translate to? That's 1 million cells per teaspoon of milk. 1 million cells per spoonful sounds like a lot, but pus is really concentrated. So how much pus is there in a glass of milk? Not much. If you take the national average and subtract the number of white blood cells you might see in normal milk, you get about 100,000 inflammatory white blood cells per milliliter, or about 25 million per cup. Then it just depends on the cellular concentration of pus. Although straight pus may have 80,000 cells per microliter or less, to be conservative, the most concentrated I could find for straight pus was about 150,000. Note that's per microliter, not per milliliter. So if there are about 25 million cells per cup and a microliter of pus contains about 150,000 cells, that would come out to be about 150 microliters of pus per glass of milk. There are about 50 microliters in a drop, so there'd be a few drops of pus per glass on average. And you can apparently taste the difference. One of the major problems associated with mastitis is the flavor and texture defects. Milk with high somatic cell counts looks the same, but evidently doesn't smell or taste as good. The large amounts of pus in mastitic milk may be aesthetically objectionable, but it's important to note that it's not a food safety issue thanks to pasteurization. The dairy industry emphasizes that ingesting large amounts of bovine white blood cells has not been shown to be harmful. No matter how inflamed and infected udders get, the pus gets cooked. But just as parents may not want to feed their children fecal bacteria in meat, even if it's irradiated fecal bacteria, as the director of the Food Policy Institute put it, irradiated poop won't make you sick, but it's still poop. Parents might not want to have their children sip pasteurized pus. You just listened to Is There Really Pus in Milk? By Michael Greger, MD at nutritionfacts.org. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson. And please note that dairy herds are usually treated with antibiotics to help prevent and manage mastitis, but organic dairy farms do not use antibiotics, so those cows are having to often suffer terribly and die from it. Although organic farms try to use natural or organic methods to control it. According to a PubMed study titled Alternative Practices in Organic Dairy Production and Effects on Animal Behavior, Health, and Welfare, it says organic dairy farmers have very few options for the treatment of diseases and for the mitigation of pain in dairy calves and cows. And it says the ability to effectively treat organic cows for mastitis is limited. Rug reported that alternative therapies, such as whey-based therapies, garlic tincture, and aloe vera, are commonly used to treat mastitis in organic cows, but limited research exists on whether these therapies are effective, and their use may actually prolong suffering. And it says that mastitis remains a common disease on dairy farms and is the leading cause for culling of cows or killing of cows. The disease can reduce milk production and milk quality, impair animal welfare, and increase veterinary and labor costs. Effective treatment beyond antibiotics are lacking. The study goes on to talk about pain management for disbudding, where they remove the horns off of calves, and it goes on, but point being, some people mistakenly believe that organic dairy means humane dairy. It is absolutely not. There's no such thing as humane dairy. In fact, organic dairy is often worse because the animals suffer more from pain. They can't be treated with common medications and antibiotics. Just another reason to ditch dairy. It's horrible for our health, horrible for the environment, and incredibly horrible for animals. So please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.